everyone, welcome to today's video. Today is another interview, and today we have David with us. He'll introduce himself in a minute, and unfortunately Hannah couldn't be here, but we're just gonna get right into it. Alrighty, so David, why don't you just introduce yourself to us?
Hello, everybody. My name is David Solano. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I was born with a disability or a handicap called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita. I honestly don't know much about it. I know it affects the joints and the muscles around the joints, and I know it affects I think 1 in every 3,000 people. But I don't know much about it. My mom, when I was little, told me. She said, David, there's only a couple things you need to know about arthrogryposis. One of them, it doesn't get worse with age. And the other one is it doesn't shorten your lifespan. Everything else you determine. So that's what I've kind of went along in life as, I'll figure this out as I go.
That's a big word.
Yeah, it's a huge word. I mean, don't ask me to spell it. I always have trouble.
No, I feel like that's the thing with a lot of medical conditions. You're like, don't ask me to spell it. I can barely say it.
I know. I think my phone finally does autocorrect with it now, so it's kind of nice that my phone recognizes it.
So, David, what were some of your experiences growing up with your disability?
I had a pretty good childhood growing up. I didn't have a lot of bullying. I know bullying is a big thing in today's world. Me growing up, I was probably bullied more by adults than I was by kids. Because every year in school, like I went to kindergarten in 1979, and I wasn't even allowed to go to my neighborhood school because of my disability. Now this is before the IDEA Act and a lot of new laws were built, but to not be allowed to go to a public school, I mean that's pretty harsh when all my neighborhood friends were going to that same school. And then as I finally went to school, like I wasn't allowed to participate in a lot of PE classes. A lot of teachers thought I needed extra help when my brain was working just fine. It was just my arms were built a little bit differently than everybody else's arms. And my legs were starting to work like everybody else's legs, but people just saw my arms. And teachers, like I had a hard time in typing class. I couldn't type with my fingers over the keys, yet I could type. But at that time, teachers only wanted you to type a certain way. And I say type because at that time it was a typewriter. We didn't have computers yet. It was like 1985. And in high school, I wasn't allowed to take PE, but yet I was an athletic person in high school. And I couldn't take any PE classes in high school, which upset me a lot because I wanted to go show off my athleticism around my friends, and I couldn't do that in high school. And so my childhood was great growing up. All those little things that bumped me down, that made me get angry, it just made me work harder to prove my worth. Like not being allowed to be at school, not allowed to go to kindergarten in 1979. In 1998, I was given the keys to a classroom because I was now a school teacher. So, I mean, everything in my life went full circle. So it was disheartening in 1979 for my parents because I was a 5-year-old kid. I didn't know any better. I didn't know about school. It didn't bother me. But I remember my mom and them talking about the battle. And then in 1998, here's a principal giving me the keys telling me, have a great school year. You're going to be a great teacher for us.
I feel like those experiences make us stronger, and like that would make such a great teacher is having those experiences and being able to kind of take those and apply them in a better way.
Yes, and then also like even not being allowed to be in high school sports or high school PE, I ended up getting a love for basketball, and I became a basketball coach in 2005. So it's kind of funny, like that guy wouldn't let me I wasn't even allowed to be in the PE room, and yet now they're giving me the keys to a basketball gym.
So I definitely relate to that a little bit with the not having such accessible gym classes, but then now I'm like huge into sports, and I'm like, how does that happen? Was I interested in sports because I couldn't play them, or was it just something holding me back kind of thing?
Yeah, like I got into sports because my dad's a big sports person. And so my dad and I bonded over sports as a kid growing up. I mean, and he always took me out to throw a ball around and play catch or whatever with a basketball or a football. And so I always had a love for sports. I wanted to play. I could play really good. It was just in high school, they would allow me in the room for whatever reason. And
Mm-hmm.
as I got older, I started to look into coaching the sport. It was just, to me, it was like a dream come true because I really wanted to be a part of sports as a kid growing up. And to be the coach and to creating a team was just a fun part of it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Now that we've kind of gone full circle, how does this kind of have an effect on your life now? Like your disability, your experiences, all that.
I think all my experiences, they make me hungry to do better. Because even when I was born, the doctor said, I probably wouldn't be able to walk. Probably wouldn't be able to ride a bike. I probably wouldn't be able to hold a pencil in my hand. I probably wouldn't be a very independent person. And now as an adult, all those, like, being told no all those times has been greater because it makes me want to do everything. And it makes me want to not just want to do them and say I did them, but I have to be great at doing them. Because when you just do them to do them, you're not really, it's defeating the whole purpose of showing that you're great. And to me, I always wanted to be the best at everything I did. And to be the best, the only way to be the best is you work really, really hard. And if you're not working really hard, well, then you're cheating yourself because you're not going that extra mile to be the best.
Mm-hmm. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yes, and I'll tell you, like, I've had a lot of battles, like even becoming a basketball coach. And when we look in reality, there's not a lot of disabled coaches in the world.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of disabled coaches coach disabled kids. I wasn't trying to coach disabled kids, and it took me 13 job applications before I finally got told yes.
Wow.
And every one of them made me mad because I'm like, I should have that job. I should have that job. And it bothered me, and I went home and I'd get mad. I would tell my wife, I'm getting upset because I'm not getting these jobs and I know I'm qualified. But I understood I had to get somebody to hire me that would look past the disability. I understood that was a big thing in the world because a lot of people don't see disabled coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally got in the front door, we smashed the door in. My first season, we went undefeated my first year, and we won a state championship.
That's awesome.
You don't win a state championship by accident. You don't win it by just waking up out of bed and saying, I'm going to go win a state championship. That doesn't happen very often. And getting to that mountain was one of the most amazing things I've ever done as an individual, even though it was my group of kids. And those kids are still close to me, even though it's been 15 years since that happened. I still talk to every one of those kids on that team. We still have a bond because we were champions for 1 year.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think that's true, that there isn't a lot of disabled coaches out there. Like when you think about it, like there's disabled athletes, but they're coached by able-bodied people. Me being visually impaired, I was a gymnastics coach, and I mean, between athletes and coaches, I was the only one who had a disability. So disability in sports huge. There's such a lack of it sometimes.
Yeah, there is. There's a huge lack, and part of it is I don't know. Maybe it's just sometimes I see a lot of people wanting more accommodations than wanting to work hard. And sometimes I know my mom taught me to meet everybody halfway. She said, you don't need an accommodation for that. You can do that. You need to do that and then ask for the next accommodation. And so sometimes I see in today's world, we're looking for more accommodations than we are looking to be better, to better ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I think that hinders the chances of us being more successful, like in some of these like coaching jobs, or like I don't see any disabled teachers where I work at. I've never seen another disabled teacher, and so that's part of just not going that extra mile sometimes, and having that personal belief that I belong somewhere, because a lot of us have that self-doubt, and we have to believe that we are equal and we do belong in other places.
Absolutely. I know you've kind of already talked about coaching and basketball, but I believe you run a nonprofit or whatever called No Limit Hoops. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
No Limit Hoops. It's the coolest thing. It's the coolest thing for me. To me, it's my baby, because I was tired. I live in a neighborhood. I teach and I coach in a neighborhood that a lot of kids fail, and I really don't like when kids fail, because part of it is the school system, part of it is the community's fault, and part of it is the politicians who don't make affordable programs for the kids. And I couldn't figure out why we had these good athletes that were dropping out of school. And I was really bummed because I was like, man, that kid was too good to drop out of school. So I go talk to these kids, and they were like, Coach, I had to go to work. I couldn't afford to do any of the programs that were out there for me to join, so I wouldn't get in trouble off the streets. And so I was like, man, we need to create something. So I went on this mission in 2016. It was like, I need to fix something up so kids have a place to go so they're not going to fail anymore. Because I was tired of a lot of young Black and brown kids failing in our main neighborhood. So I went on this mission, and I wanted to make a free basketball program. And I know a lot of people do basketball teams, but I create a basketball community. So in my gym, we get about 60 kids on a given night. 60 kids from a tough neighborhood who don't go to the same school, so they don't really get along with each other that well. But after about 2 or 3 weeks, they start to become friends. Now that we're on COVID and I look on Facebook in quarantine time, I look on Facebook and they're all hanging out with each other now. And I was like, 3 years ago, these kids would have been fighting on the streets. Mm-hmm. Now they're like, let's get a ball and go play basketball somewhere. And that's giving them a chance to graduate high school. Because if you get these kids who are struggling and they don't have nowhere to go and they can't afford somewhere to go, I give them a free place to go every year from the middle of February to the end of the school year. So I say, let them come to my gym. I do it for free. My nonprofit helps pay for the gym fees. So a kid doesn't come to my gym and have to pay any money. I tell them, just come in with a good attitude. And
how do you get the funds for that?
We got donations. We sell T-shirts to help raise money. And we're funded for about the next 3 to 4 years if I don't go out and get more funding. But I believe as I go ask for more, we'll get more because we're making a difference in kids' lives. We do at the end of our night, we call it the kids who win the most games in our gym. They get to take photos, and we made these special customized championship belts. And they cut like a little video, kind of like WWE wrestlers. And they cut a little 20-second promo talking stuff about being the champion for the night. And it's really cool because you get some 18-year-olds just talking stuff, and they're like, come back on Thursday night and see if you can beat us. Because we run it every Tuesday and Thursday night. And it's good because then when they come back the following night, we make them switch teams. So on a given night, our champions could be from 4 different high schools, which is what we want because we want kids blending from different neighborhoods and different schools to hang out. And when they come together, they have one goal of winning those belts so they can be called the neighborhood champions for the night. And our Instagram page and our Facebook page, if you go look at them, you'll see the kids with the belts. And it's fun because an 18-year-old kid, when you give them a championship belt, they're like a 12-year-old boy just hollering, and you're like, all right, knock it off now. We're going to record now. Be nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's just absolutely amazing.
So it's really fun. And I mean, we got shut down this year because of COVID. So hopefully if everything happens, we can open up again next February. But, if not, we'll be there the following year.
Cross our fingers. So how did you get into playing basketball?
My parents moved to Phoenix, Arizona when I was 12 years old. So I had no friends really because we moved to a state that we didn't know anybody. And so in my apartment complex, there was a basketball hoop. And I asked my dad to buy me a basketball. And when I think about it, my arms were about the size of the basketball. But he had no questions about it. He was like, I'll buy a basketball for you. And he bought me this red, white, and blue basketball, I remember. And I went to this basketball hoop, and I shot a basketball every single night there that summer. And I didn't really make that many baskets. I like to tell you I made every basket I shot, but in reality, I probably made one basket every 3 days. But I went out there every day, and I kept on trying to figure out how to shoot a basketball. And then little by little, I started to figure it out. And as I figured it out, I started to love the game even more. And then my dad and I, we watched a lot of basketball on TV, and we always talked about how the game was going and different things. And little by little, I started to figure out how to shoot a basketball. And then one day, these neighborhood kids that moved into the apartments came out to play with me. And I was kind of mad because I was like, no, this is my alone time. I wasn't ready to play with other people. I didn't even know if I could really shoot around other people. And that night, I started to play with them, and I actually did play really well with them, and the kids were like, "Hey, you're pretty good," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, somebody said I'm pretty good at this thing," and it just took off. Like the game, my love for I love the game. I love the orange ball. That orange ball just took me places. And kind of what I do with my Solano No Limit Hoops, I tell the kids, I'm now giving you the orange ball that helped guide me through school. Now I'm giving you the orange ball to help guide you through school. Let's let this orange ball take us. Let the orange ball guide us. And it guided me to a lot of good friendships. It guided me to creating a lot of friendships with other kids. And even as a coach, it guided me to creating a lot of great relationships with a lot of young players.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. How has your disability impacted your experience with basketball?
It's funny because I don't really see myself as having a disability, and the kids that I've coached over time don't really see my disability. The only time we see the disability come stand out is when we go to a road gymnasium and the other team hasn't seen me before because they're like, "Oh my gosh, look at him." The parents are like, "Oh my God, look at their coach." And you hear the jeers, and I think it's fun to hear them. I really do. I know a lot of people will be mentally down on it, but I'm a pretty mentally strong person, and I think it's kind of fun. I think it helps me coach better. It helps my team focus a little more because they're like, "Coach, look at them," and I'm like, "Guys, it's no big deal. They haven't seen me before. The first time you seen me, you stared at me too." And the kids are like, "You saw me stare at you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did, but staring doesn't bother me. It's okay. We're beyond that now." And I think the disability part of it is I never really think about it as having disability until I go to these places. And I know, like, when I first started coaching, after games, opposing coaches wouldn't shake my hand. And yet in today's world, you're supposed to shake hands after a game. Well, not before COVID, but before COVID, you're supposed to shake hands, and it's a sign of disrespect if you don't shake hands.
Yeah.
But for 4 years, I didn't get a handshake. I won the state championship, and I didn't even get a handshake. And I find it comical because a lot of people say, "Well, I love people with disabilities." Well, you love them until they competing against you one-on-one in a game style fashion. And so my disability doesn't really stick out to me, but to others it probably does. But I know, like in my gym, when we run our Solano No Limit Hoops, every kid comes in and gives me a high five, gives me knuckles. It doesn't bother them one bit.
I feel like that's very similar to living with my sister who has a facial difference. And then sometimes we go in public and she's like, "Oh my God, people are staring at me." Or like she notices those things. I'm like, "What? Like staring at what?" Like I don't even acknowledge it anymore. It's basically invisible to me because I've been around it for so long. And I think it is just that new experience for some people.
Yeah, and I go with it, and I don't get offended. I don't get offended because most time they're just staring. It's not. You have to, with the disability, you have to be mentally strong. But even as a normal body person, there is such a thing. They still have to be mentally strong too, because people are going to say things about everybody, and you can take it offensive, and all it is going to do is ruin your day.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not going to let somebody else ruin my day because I'm too busy having a good day.
Exactly. I love that. I feel like this kind of leads into the next and last question. If you could give a piece of advice to somebody younger who's going through something similar or just a hard time, what would it be?
I always say keep work. I always talk to young kids about working hard to be better every day. It doesn't. When you wake up every day, wake up with the ability, wake up with the notion of I'm going to do something better than I did yesterday. So if you exercise and you exercise for 10 minutes, tomorrow exercise for 11 minutes because you're getting a little bit better. You exercise for 12 minutes the next day. But after a month, you're going to be exercising for 40 minutes if you do one more minute every day. And I look at young people with disabilities, and I would tell young people with disabilities is you gotta work. You gotta work, even though doctors say you can't do something. That doesn't mean your heart says you can't do it. Because if your heart says you can do something, then you can do it. You just gotta find a way to do it. And sometimes people with disabilities, we can figure out ways to do things our own way better than anybody else in the world. And what stops us though is our mind. Our mind says no, we can't do it. And I believe in the power of yet. I can't do it now. I can say that, but then that shuts my brain down. If I say I can't do it yet, my brain still says I'm going to figure this out. And so I always tell the young kids, work with the power of yet, because you're going to get there. but you can't shut down and say, I can't do it. You got to keep working. And you want to be accepted. We want equality. We also got to fight for that. Everybody in the world fights for equality every day in the workplace. You want to be as equal to your coworkers. You don't want to be there. You don't get the job and be like, quit working. I'm going to quit working. I got a good job. You still got to work to get better and better. And with people with disabilities, we always got to work to be better and better.
Work a little bit harder, get a little bit stronger every day. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because our muscles grow at a slower pace. So if you work a little bit harder each day, your muscles will start to grow and you'll start to be able to do stuff as everybody else does. But we have to keep working. The work is what is a great equalizer for what I believe in sometimes.
Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you so much for that. So that does conclude our interview today. Thank you so much for talking with us today, David. I loved every minute of it. You're such an amazing speaker. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was nice talking to you. It was fun. I hope people liked the video.
Awesome. And we'll see everyone next week.